Welcome, traveler. Tonight we are in feudal Japan. The year is perhaps 1600. The battle ended 3 days ago, and an old samurai named Kenji sits alone in his house at the edge of a pine forest. The fire is low. The night is cold and completely still, and for the first time in 40 years, he has nowhere to go tomorrow. Come and sit with him. Let the silence of Japan carry you to sleep. The house is small, smaller than people might expect for a man of Kenji's standing, but he has always preferred small spaces, rooms that can be heated by a single fire, ceilings low enough to feel enclosed, windows narrow enough to frame the outside world like a painting rather than expose it all at once. The house sits at the very edge of the village, where the last building meets the beginning of the pine forest. From the main room, where Kenji sits now, you can see the trees through the paper screen of the eastern wall. Dark shapes in the darkness, still and tall and very old. They were here long before the village. They will be here long after. The room itself is almost empty, as Japanese rooms are meant to be. A low wooden table, dark with age and use. 2 cushions on the tatami mat floor, woven from rice straw. A small iron brazier in the center of the room, the charcoal inside burning a deep, steady orange. Along the far wall, a tokonoma, a small alcove with a single scroll hanging in it. Brushwork, a mountain in winter, snow on the branches of a pine tree. Below the scroll, a ceramic vase holding a single dried branch, and to the right of the tokonoma, on a low wooden stand, his swords, the daisho, the long sword and the short sword. He has carried them for 40 years. They are as familiar to him as his own hands. More familiar, perhaps. He looks at them now, from across the room. They are clean. He cleaned them this morning, as he cleans them every morning, with oil and a soft cloth, slowly, carefully, the way his teacher taught him when he was 16 years old. Tomorrow morning he will clean them again, and the morning after, even if he never uses them again, especially if he never uses them again. 3 days ago, Kenji fought his last battle. He does not know yet that it was his last. Or perhaps he does. There is a feeling a man gets, sometimes, after a battle. Not the usual feeling. The exhaustion, the relief, the strange flatness that follows extreme intensity. Something underneath all of that. A sense of completion, of a chapter closing. He felt it this time, standing on the field after the fighting had stopped, looking at the sky, which had been a pale winter gray all day and was now beginning to darken toward evening. The sounds of the battle fading, the shouting, the clash of metal, the terrible sounds that he had learned long ago to hear without hearing, all of it fading, and in its place, a silence that felt different from other silences he had known, wider, deeper, more permanent. He had stood there for a long time, his sword still in his hand, his armor heavy on his shoulders, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. Then he had sheathed his sword, turned, and walked home. It had taken 2 days. He had walked alone, mostly, through the winter landscape, rice fields lying fallow under a thin skin of frost, bare trees along the road, villages where the people watched him pass from behind their shuttered windows. He had not minded the walking. He had always done his best thinking while walking. Kenji is 62 years old. He became a samurai at 22, later than most. He had been a farmer's son, not the usual background for a warrior. But the lord of this region had needed men during a particularly difficult conflict, and Kenji had presented himself, and something about him, His stillness, perhaps, or his eyes, had caused the Lord's senior retainer to accept him. He had trained for 2 years before his first battle. Those 2 years had been the hardest of his life, not physically, though the physical training was extreme, but internally. The samurai way, Bushido, was not simply about fighting. It was about a way of being in the world. Loyalty, honor, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, rectitude. These were not ideas to be understood. They were practices to be embodied, to be lived so completely that they ceased to be choices and became simply the way things were. Kenji had taken this seriously, more seriously perhaps than some of his fellow samurai, who paid lip service to the code while living otherwise. He had served 3 lords over 40 years. The first had died in battle, a good death by all measures. The second had retired to a monastery. The third, the current lord, had released Kenji from service last week, with honor and a small pension, citing his age and his 40 years of faithful service. It had been gracious, and Kenji had received it graciously. But standing outside the Lord's hall afterward, in the cold winter air, with his discharge papers in his hand, he had not known quite what to do next. He still does not know, but he is beginning to think that not knowing might be acceptable. For now, the charcoal in the brazier shifts, a small sound, a settling. Kenji watches the glow change slightly, then stabilize. He has been watching fires his whole life, campfires mostly, the fires of an army on the move, burning through the night. He had sat beside hundreds of them, thousands perhaps, in winter campaigns when the cold was so deep that the fire was not comfort, but survival, in summer nights when the fire was almost unnecessary, but the light was still needed, still wanted, always the same act, the gathering of wood, the striking of flint, the careful feeding of the small flame until it became something larger. There is a quality of attention that fire demands, not the sharp, urgent attention of battle, something slower, more patient. The fire does what it does at its own pace, in its own way. You cannot hurry it. You can only tend it, feed it when it needs feeding. Leave it alone when it doesn't. Watch it find its own rhythm. Kenji has always found this restful, the way something can be completely beyond your control and completely safe at the same time. He adds a small piece of charcoal to the brazier, watches it catch. The glow brightens slightly. The room feels warmer immediately, or perhaps it only seems that way. Perhaps warmth is as much about attention as about temperature. Kenji thinks of his teacher tonight, an old man named Takeda. He has been dead for 20 years, but Kenji thinks of him often, especially on nights like this one. Takeda had been 60 when Kenji met him, a small man, slight, with white hair and hands that seemed too delicate for the work they were capable of. He had been the finest swordsman Kenji had ever seen, not because of strength or speed, though he had those, because of stillness. Takeda moved through combat the way water moves around a stone, not with force, with presence, with a quality of attention so complete that he seemed to exist in a slightly different relationship with time than everyone around him. Kenji had asked him once, early in his training, when he was still young enough to ask naive questions directly, how he achieved this. Takeda had been quiet for a long time. They were sitting in the dojo after an evening practice session. The students had gone. The room was empty except for the 2 of them, the lamps burning low. Finally Takeda had said, "You cannot achieve it. You can only stop preventing it. Kenji had not understood then. He thinks he understands now. The stillness was always there. Underneath the fear, the ambition, the striving, the constant internal noise of a young man trying to become something. The stillness was always there, waiting. All the years of training had not created it. They had slowly, painstakingly removed everything that was covering it. The pine forest outside the eastern wall makes a sound tonight, very faint. A movement in the branches, not wind exactly. The air is mostly still, just the trees settling, adjusting, the way trees do at night, responding to the change in temperature. Kenji has always been aware of the forest. Even asleep, some part of him has always tracked the sounds from outside. The particular way the birds sound in this forest at different times of day. The sound of deer moving through the undergrowth in the early morning. The sudden silence that means something larger is nearby. He had learned to read these things during his years of campaigning. An army moving through a forest makes the birds go quiet ahead of it. If you know how to listen, you can hear an enemy coming long before you can see them. But tonight there is no enemy. There is nothing in the forest but the forest. He finds this thought both obvious and slightly astonishing. For 40 years, every sound from outside has carried the possibility of threat. Every movement in the darkness has been assessed, categorized, responded to. Tonight, for perhaps the first time in his adult life, a sound in the darkness is just a sound, a branch moving in the cold air, nothing more, nothing less. He breathes slowly, lets this simplicity settle over him like snow settling on still water. Kenji was married once. Her name was Hana. She died young, of fever, 28 years ago. They had been married for 7 years. They had no children. He had grieved. He had continued. Because continuing was what was required. He had not married again. Not from lack of opportunity. His lord had suggested it several times, and there had been women who would have been willing. But something in Kenji had closed after Hana. Not bitterly, not with self-pity, just quietly, the way a door closes when a room is no longer in use. He still thought of her, her laugh particularly, a quiet sound, unexpectedly warm, the way she made tea in the morning, moving through the small kitchen with an efficiency that somehow also looked like grace. The particular way she had of tilting her head when she was listening carefully to something. He had been a better person with her than without her. He knew this. It was not a painful knowledge exactly, just a fact. Like knowing that a winter landscape is more beautiful after snow. The landscape is still beautiful without the snow, but with it, something is added that cannot be replaced. Kenji closes his eyes. He sits very still on his cushion. His hands rest on his knees, palms upward. His back is straight, not rigid, not forced, but naturally upright, the way a tree is upright, not because it is trying to be, because that is simply its nature. He breathes, in through the nose, slowly. Out through the mouth, even more slowly. He has meditated since he was a young man. His teacher Takeda had insisted on it. 20 minutes every morning before training, 20 minutes every evening after. For 40 years, he has sat in fields before battles, in tents during campaigns, in temples and way stations and the homes of strangers. On hillsides in summer and in snowstorms in winter, always the same, the breath, the stillness, the slow settling of the mind, towards something quieter than thought. He does not try to stop thinking. He has learned that trying to stop thinking is just more thinking. He simply watches the thoughts as they arise, notices them, lets them pass, like clouds across a sky. The sky itself does not move. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. Always the same sky, always unchanged. He is trying tonight to be the sky. Kenji has thought much about war. He has had 40 years to think about it. He does not romanticize it. He has seen too much for that. But he does not condemn it absolutely either. War, like most human things, is complicated. He has fought in wars that were necessary, or seemed so, from where he stood. Conflicts where one lord's cruelty had to be answered, where the alternative to fighting was a worse suffering for more people. He has also fought in wars that were not necessary, that were about pride or territory, or the ambitions of men who would not themselves face the consequences of their decisions. He has had no choice in those cases but to serve. Loyalty was not conditional on his personal judgment. This is something he has sat with for many years, the tension between loyalty and conscience. He has not resolved it. He suspects it cannot be resolved, only lived with, carefully, with as much integrity as circumstances allow. What war has taught him ultimately is not about war at all. It has taught him about impermanence, that nothing, no life, no relationship, no arrangement of circumstances is guaranteed to continue, that the present moment is the only moment that is certain, and that the present moment properly attended to is always enough, always more than enough. The fire has burned very low now, just a deep, steady glow from the brazier. Enough warmth, enough light to see by, barely. Kenji does not add more charcoal. He lets it be. Outside, the forest is completely still. The birds that were moving earlier have settled. Whatever stirred the branches has passed. The night has reached its deepest point. The hour when the world seems to hold its breath, when the darkness is most complete, and also somehow most peaceful. Kenji opens his eyes, looks around the small room, the scroll in the tokonoma, the mountain in winter, the single dried branch in the ceramic vase, his swords on their stand, everything in its place, everything as it should be. He thinks about tomorrow. He will wake before dawn, as he always does, clean his swords, meditate, make tea, perhaps walk in the forest. He has not walked in a forest simply for the pleasure of walking in a long time. There has always been somewhere to go, something to accomplish. Tomorrow there is nowhere to go, nothing to accomplish, just the forest, and the morning, and whatever comes after. He finds, to his slight surprise, that he is not afraid of this, not afraid of the emptiness of a life without a defined purpose. The emptiness, he thinks, might be the point. The emptiness might be where something new can begin. There is a small garden behind the house. Kenji made it himself over many years, adding to it each time he returned from a campaign. It is not large, perhaps 10 paces by 8, enclosed by a low stone wall on 3 sides, the house wall on the 4th. In the center, a small arrangement of stones, gray and white and pale brown, chosen from a riverbed 2 days' walk from here. Around the stones raked gravel, white, very fine. The pattern of the raking changes. He rakes it differently each time, sometimes in straight parallel lines, sometimes in curves, sometimes in patterns that radiate outward from the stones like ripples in water. There is one pine tree, very old, growing in the corner near the eastern wall, its trunk bent slightly by decades of winter wind, its bark deeply furrowed, dark and textured, its branches reaching out over the gravel in long, asymmetric gestures. A small stone lantern stands beside the pine. He lit it tonight before coming inside. Its light falls on the gravel and the stones in a warm, uneven circle. He cannot see the garden from where he sits, but he knows it is there, the lantern burning, the gravel white and still, the old pine tree standing in its corner, as it has stood for 100 years before him, and will stand for 100 years after. There is something comforting about that. To have made something, to have tended it, to know that it will continue. Kenji reaches forward slowly, lifts the small iron kettle from beside the brazier, pours water into his tea bowl. Not tea, just water. Warm, plain, simple. He holds the bowl in both hands, feels the warmth against his palms, looks down at the surface of the water, still and clear, reflecting very faintly the last glow of the charcoal. He takes a slow sip, sets the bowl down, closes his eyes again. He is very tired, not the exhaustion of battle. That is a different kind of tired, a frantic tiredness, wired and restless. This is deeper, the tiredness of 62 years of living fully, of paying attention, of trying as best he could to do what was right. He has not always succeeded, he knows this, but he has always tried, and tonight, in this small room, with the fire low and the forest still and the garden lantern burning outside, that feels like enough, more than enough. Let your own breathing slow now, all the way down. Feel the weight of your body, heavy and warm and perfectly still, like a stone in a garden, like the old pine tree in its corner, rooted, present, held by the earth beneath you. There is nothing required of you tonight, no battle to prepare for, no decision to make, no weight to carry forward into tomorrow. Just this breath, in and out, in and out. The fire is very low now. The forest is completely still. The stars are turning slowly overhead, as they always turn, as they turned before you, as they will turn after. And somewhere in feudal Japan, in a small house at the edge of a pine forest, an old samurai sits with his eyes closed, breathing slowly, at peace for perhaps the first time in 40 years. Let his peace be your peace tonight. Let his stillness be your stillness, down and down and down, into the deep, quiet sleep of a life well lived. Sleep well, traveler. The pine forest is keeping watch tonight,